The bass is vibrating through the floorboards, aggressive and relentless. You can barely hear the person standing 2 feet in front of you, but you nod anyway, pretending to care about a meaningless corporate story you'll forget by tomorrow morning. You are holding a glass with a single, perfectly spherical ice cube and 2 ounces of flavored liquid that just cost you $25. Add the surge pricing rideshare to get across town, the fabricated cover charge at the door, and the inevitable late-night junk food you will buy just to feel something. You are looking at $150 burned before midnight. Look around that dimly lit room. Look at the exhausted professionals wearing shoes they financed, holding overpriced drinks they put on a credit card carrying a 24% interest rate. They are desperately trying to project an aura of success in a room full of strangers who are entirely focused on projecting their own fabricated success. It is a silent, perfectly orchestrated financial slaughter, and society calls it networking. They brand it as living your best life. But if you zoom out, if you actually look at the upper echelons of true quiet wealth and the minds that architect the systems rather than blindly consume them, you will notice a glaring, undeniable absence. The sharpest minds, the individuals with the most bulletproof net worths, are not in that room. They are locked safely inside their homes on a Saturday night. They are intentionally, coldly ignoring invitations that the average middle-class earner would sacrifice a portion of their paycheck to receive. Why? Because modern socialization is no longer about genuine human connection. It is a highly optimized taxation on your vanity. It is a ruthless extraction mechanism designed to punish your boredom and profit immensely off your desperate, hardwired need for external validation. True intellectual dominance begins the exact moment you realize that most friendships in the modern era are just unspoken status competitions funded by high-interest debt and sustained by a mutual fear of missing out. The system has sold you the ultimate lie. They told you that if you aren't seen, you are irrelevant. That staying in is a symptom of social anxiety, a failure to thrive, or a sign that you are falling behind in the invisible race. They weaponized your fear of isolation. They convinced you that sitting in a quiet, peaceful room is a tragic waste of a weekend while standing in a loud, overcrowded mousetrap, swiping a piece of plastic for a heavily marked-up cocktail, is a triumph of youth. Think about the premium broke archetype in your circle. The guy who never misses an event. He is always at the reserved table. He always tags the exclusive location. He looks incredibly successful on a 6-inch glowing screen. But his checking account is in a constant, agonizing state of cardiac arrest. He is sprinting on the wheel, sweating out his future to subsidize a lifestyle his Monday to Friday salary simply cannot cover. He trades hours of his finite, unrecoverable life just to prove to people he secretly despises that he isn't a failure. This is the front door tax. It is the toll you pay the exact second you cross the threshold of your house to participate in the performance art of modern adulthood. You don't just pay with money. You pay with your energy, your focus, and the quiet compounding of your future wealth. You swallow the social bait, you completely ignore the steel bar of the trap, and you convince yourself the cheese was worth the brutal financial hangover on Sunday morning. But the crazy part isn't that the average consumer happily walks into the slaughterhouse every single weekend. The crazy part is the invisible psychological engineering that makes them feel absolutely terrified to stay out of it. And once you understand the cold mechanics of why the smartest players refuse to play the game, you can never unsee it. Step inside that venue again. Look past the flashing lights and the carefully curated playlists. This isn't a place of leisure. It is a highly calibrated extraction facility. The hospitality industry doesn't sell drinks. It sells temporary relief from the crushing reality of a 40-hour work week. They know you are exhausted. They know you despise your morning commute. And they have weaponized that exact exhaustion against your wallet. You drag yourself out on a Friday night because modern culture aggressively dictates that sitting on your couch is a wasted youth. You put on clothes bought on credit, walking into a room specifically engineered to disorient your financial logic. The loud music isn't there for ambiance. It's there to prevent real conversation, forcing you to consume more liquids just to fill the awkward silences. You are a laboratory subject, running through an illuminated maze, and every time you swipe your plastic, the machine dispenses a tiny drop of dopamine, masquerading as a good time. Friendships built exclusively around spending money are not friendships. They are mutual financial suicide pacts disguised as networking. Think about the painful conversations you endure. You stand there listening to a guy in a leased luxury vehicle complain about his corporate manager, while someone else eagerly waits to brag about a promotion that barely covers annual inflation. It is a tragic theater of the absurd. Everyone is performing a desperate script of success, terrified that if they drop the mask for a single second, the rest of the pack will realize they are all drowning in the exact same consumer debt. This is performative exhaustion. The mental toll of projecting an affluent lifestyle is significantly heavier than the physical labor of earning your paycheck. You spend the entire week generating income, only to spend the weekend distributing it to wealthy restaurant owners and surge pricing algorithms. You are paying an exorbitant premium to maintain a social standing that does not actually exist. And the truly sinister part? The system convinced you this ritual is absolutely mandatory for career advancement. They call it building your network. They tell you that life-changing opportunities are found at the bottom of a $20 glass. But if you analyze the cold mechanics of who actually gets ahead, you will uncover a very different, very quiet reality. Level 2. The performative treadmill. The moment you understand that modern socializing is primarily a financial transaction, your worldview completely shifts. You begin to look at your calendar, not as a list of exciting events, but as an itemized bill of liabilities. Every destination wedding, every mandatory happy hour with coworkers you wouldn't acknowledge if you didn't share a payroll, every weekend brunch designed solely for digital documentation. Solitude is not a social deficit. It is the highest form of financial defense in an economy specifically designed to monetize your deepest insecurities. Highly intelligent people look at a packed social schedule and see nothing but a massive vulnerability. They stay home not because they are afraid of the world, but because they cracked the code of the trap. They realize the energy required to entertain people who secretly want them to fail is infinitely better spent building leverage. You are out there buying rounds of drinks, praying it translates to social equity. They are sitting in a quiet room acquiring real equity. But to truly understand the catastrophic depth of this mistake, you have to stop looking at the bar receipt and start looking at the lifetime calculation. Let's run the brutal, unforgiving math on a standard weekend for an archetype we will call Marcus. Marcus is a 32-year-old senior logistics analyst living in a major metropolitan area. He makes $85,000 a year. On paper, he is a modern success story. In reality, he is hemorrhaging equity every single weekend. Friday night dinner and drinks with the office crowd, $120. Saturday morning brunch to cure the psychological hangover, $60. Saturday night surge-priced ride shares, cover charges, and heavily taxed alcohol, $150. Sunday recovery takeout, because he is physically too drained to boil water, $40, that is $370 a weekend, Marcus actively justifies this. He thinks it's the standard cost of doing business in his social circle. He genuinely believes he is buying memories. But let's run that fabricated joy through the ruthless machinery of compound interest. $370 a weekend is roughly $1,600 a month. $19,000 a year. If Marcus locked himself in his apartment, embraced the silence, and redirected that exact capital into an index fund yielding a conservative 8%, over 20 years, that money doesn't just sit there. It aggressively multiplies. That weekend bar tab transforms into over $900,000. Socializing in the 21st century is not a recreational activity. It is a voluntary wealth transfer program. You are systematically liquidating your future freedom to finance the immediate luxury of a hospitality group CEO. The consumer runs relentlessly on the social wheel, aggressively chasing the cheese of peer validation, entirely blind to the fact that the credit maze is extracting a $19,000 annual subscription fee just to keep the wheel spinning. It is a flawless, mathematically perfect trap. Phase 3. The Friday night equation. The illusion shatters completely when you factor in the invisible weight of taxes. To afford that $19,000 annual social tax, Marcus actually has to earn $26,000 pre-tax. Do you understand what that actually means? It means Marcus spends the first 4 months of every single year working exclusively to pay for the privilege of standing in loud, crowded rooms, holding a glass of liquid he doesn't want, talking to people he will eventually outgrow. He must endure hundreds of hours of mind-numbing corporate meetings. He must swallow his pride when an incompetent manager disrespects him. He must sacrifice his physical health, sitting under fluorescent lights, just to generate the capital required to prove he is living his best life on a Saturday night. He is trading thousands of hours of finite, unrecoverable life energy for a fleeting moment of being perceived as successful by a group of people who are equally trapped. This is the math they meticulously hide in the fine print of modern culture. When you buy a round of overpriced tequila shots for a group of passing acquaintances, you are not being generous. You are literally swiping a piece of your 50s and 60s. You are selling your future peace of mind at a massive, unforgivable discount. The system demands that you stay visible because your visibility is their primary revenue stream. Phase 4. The compound cost of flexing. The people who look the loudest in public are almost always the quietest when the credit card statement hits the inbox. They are financially bleeding out in broad daylight, using high-interest debt as a temporary tourniquet. Highly intelligent people, the ones quietly building generational fortresses, understand the devastating concept of the social opportunity cost. They know that every dollar spent on performative extroversion is a dollar that cannot be deployed as leverage. They look out their window at the city skyline on a Friday night, and they don't see a playground. They see a giant, illuminated extraction grid, a machine perfectly designed to separate the emotionally impulsive from their hard-earned capital. They choose the couch. They choose the book. They choose the absolute zero-cost luxury of their own company. Because as the night ends across the city, as the lights come on, as the surge pricing hits a catastrophic 3x multiplier, the jaws of the trap snap shut. The illusion of the weekend evaporates instantly, leaving the exhausted consumer staring into the abyss, waiting for the brutal reality of Monday morning. Monday morning arrives. The alarm clock is not a gentle reminder. It is a financial warden. Marcus wakes up physically depleted, mentally foggy, and financially lighter. He checks his banking app while brushing his teeth, feeling that familiar, nauseating drop in his stomach. The $19,000 annual subscription to the Social Matrix just deducted its weekend installment. He puts on his finance suit, drinks his bitter coffee, and steps right back onto the wheel. He is running on fumes, completely unaware that he just sold another 72 hours of his future to impress strangers in a dark room. But while the lab rats are desperately navigating the neon-lit corridors of the city, swiping their plastic for another hit of temporary validation, the architect is mapping the exit. The highly intelligent individual did not spend their Saturday night shouting over a bass line. They sat in a quiet room. They read. They optimized a portfolio. They slept 8 solid hours. They built an asymmetrical advantage while the rest of the pack was aggressively depreciating their net worth. True freedom in the 21st century is the absolute refusal to be a background extra in someone else's digital flex. Society labels this behavior as antisocial. They diagnose it as a fear of missing out. They want you to feel guilty for choosing peace over performance. But the smartest players understand that missing out is not a tragedy. It is a highly aggressive financial strategy. They are not hiding from the world. They are actively starving the extraction machine. They recognize that every dollar retained is a physical piece of their own freedom, reclaimed from the trap. Phase 5. The Fortress of Solitude. When you stop bleeding capital to maintain a fabricated image, your environment fundamentally shifts. Your home stops being a temporary waiting room between Friday nights and Monday mornings. It transforms into a fortress. You lock the door. You turn off the algorithmic noise. You embrace the agonizing, beautiful boredom that the modern consumer is too terrified to face. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the exact psychological space where leverage is created. When you are not constantly overstimulated by overpriced menus and performative conversations, your brain is forced to confront reality. You look at your numbers. You build the spreadsheet. You calculate exactly how many months of living expenses you have saved, and you realize that quiet, boring accumulation is infinitely more satisfying than a loud, expensive deficit. This is the concept of stealth wealth. The highest status symbol you can ever acquire is the ability to be completely irrelevant to people you do not respect. The individual practicing stealth wealth drives a 5-year-old paid-off sedan. Their clothes lack recognizable logos. Their weekend plans consist of a local park and a book that costs less than a single premium cocktail. To the heavily indebted observer, they look entirely average. They look like they are falling behind in the race. But underneath that invisible exterior is a fortress of liquid capital, low overhead, and absolute peace of mind. They are immune to the social tax. They have successfully disconnected their ego from their spending habits. Phase 6. The Ghost in the Machine. You eventually become a ghost. You still exist in society, but you no longer participate in the slaughter. You might show up to the occasional mandatory dinner, but you order a sparkling water with ice. You observe the frantic status anxiety vibrating around the table, and you leave early. You are no longer emotionally triggered by the guy tossing his keys to a leased luxury SUV on the valet podium. You look at him and you don't see success. You just see a walking amortization schedule. You pity the cage he bought for himself. You don't need the validation of the VIP section because your dividend yield covers your baseline living expenses. You have purchased the only luxury that actually matters: optionality. The ability to wake up on a Tuesday morning and owe absolutely nothing to anyone. That is what the smartest players are doing on a Saturday night. They are aggressively buying back their own time. If you want to keep funding the illusion, keep scrolling. Go swipe your card for another round of liquid validation. Defend your spot on the wheel. But if you are ready to stop bleeding out in the neon maze, hit the like button. Subscribe. And if you made it to the end of this financial autopsy, leave a comment below saying, "Overpriced ice cube." The premium broke crowd will just think it's a glitch in the comments, but the ones quietly building their fortresses in the dark will know exactly what it means. My name is Daniel Rath. I will see you outside the maze.